Good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is election night, and I am Mark Johnston, your host for Your Vote, Your TV's extensive coverage of the 2022 municipal election. Delighted that you could join us today. We have a lot of activity to track and cover and bring you results of tonight's election. Of course, the election polls have been open because of electronic means that was since the 12th and 14th, depending on where you are in the region. I have the great pleasure of welcoming for our show tonight Peter Delanty, former mayor of Cobourg, long-running politician. Peter, thank you for being here.
Delighted to be here.
Absolutely.
Should be exciting.
Absolutely. And York Bell Smith, a long-running member here at Cogeco and your TV Northumberland. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be sitting here for sure. Very exciting night. I love elections. There's just something about the opportunity to get out and vote and have a say in what's happening where you live.
100%.
Yeah.
The energy's rising, and we get to be here at the moment where everything comes running in and share with our viewers what's happening in different parts of Northumberland. Certainly, we do have a strong focus on Cobourg and Port Hope. And of course, Andrew's going to be with us from Port Hope, reporting from that section as well. And through the evening, we'll have some guests joining us. Those that are being elected into office will come through the studio. We're going to have an open chat as well. But let's start off with just an overall, Peter and York, how things have gone through the election in your opinion. You guys are very connected to the pulse of elections here in politics, of how things specifically as an election this year, 2020. How do you think things have gone with incumbents and those coming up behind them? Generally, what's your overview of the election this year?
Well, I think in Cobourg, every position is being contested this year. And I think the beginning of the election was kind of like Sleepy Hollow. There wasn't a lot of attention to it. But suddenly, certainly in the mayor's race, that became a real race. And I think both people running for mayor, Henderson and Cleveland, have put up a really good show on fighting for the support. I think that'll be an interesting race. There are two different kinds of personalities. Mm-hmm. And again, with the deputy mayor, with Sagan and with Beattie, again, two different personalities. And I think it showed during the campaign what they thought their vision was of the town and where they would like to see it going. So I think it'll be very interesting. I think depending on who gets in, it will really give a direction for the town that would be dramatically different if others had gotten in. I think in council, there are two open spaces because two have left, one running for deputy mayor and the other just retiring. It'll be interesting. There are a number of interesting new candidates that have put their name forward and saying, we would like to be on council because we think it's important for the growth and the development of the town. And they're really some excellent candidates. I applaud them for stepping forward. And so I think it'll be an interesting race, and I think Cobourg will be delighted with the results, I think.
Well, thank you, Peter, and we're delighted to have you here. You've been on council, you've sat in the mayor's office, you know the run, and to have your perspective is deeply valued to us as well. Thank you for that. York, of course, municipal matters, you know the pulse on the politics here in the region. I do want to point out quickly that we're covering the town of Cobourg, municipality of Port Hope. We've got Hamilton Township, Crummy Township, Alnwick, Haldeman, Brighton Township, and Trent Hills as well. What are your thoughts, York, on how things have gone so far?
I think, and you kind of touched on it a bit, Peter, the number of fresh faces that are coming in and that put their names in and decided to run. I think this is something we've looked for a lot of the last few municipal elections since I've been here anyway. There seemed to be a bit of an old guard, but now there's a lot of new faces that are coming in. There were actually last time as well, But then you take a look at what happened immediately after the last election and the pandemic coming in. So that sort of changed everything. So I'm kind of surprised not to see more incumbents that would want to come back and get a good full run at a full 4 years of a non-pandemic situation to really show what you can do. I wonder, where would we be right now? What would the state of this election be if there was no pandemic?
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes,
like, would John Henderson have been challenged by Lucas Cleveland? I don't know. Would there have been more in there? You know, Port Hope, we got 4 running for mayor. Would there be 4 if it wasn't for that? So you got to sort of take these last 4 years and sort of step back and look at it a little bit different than you would other councils.
And I think, Mark, there are issues right across Northumberland County that really are going to impact the citizens in Northumberland County over the next 4 years. If you go right to the far eastern end of the county, like in Trent Hills, they have 3 issues there. They have a recreation center that they want to build, which is very expensive. And also there's a real move on to build a new hospital. And you don't do that for $500,000. In fact, it's closer to probably $75 million. And then finally, they have the bridge, which is always a controversy up there. I think people have accepted it now, but But so we have those controversies in the Far East, and then as we get into Port Hope and Cobourg, like Port Hope, I don't know whether there's a burning issue over there, but certainly Wesleyville, I think, would jump out at you as an issue that the town felt they had in their hands, and suddenly it was snatched away. What kind of an impact is that having on the council and on the town? I think Port Hope has seen tremendously excellent growth. Are people happy with it, and will that be an advantage to the incumbents? We'll see shortly tonight.
Fair enough. And speaking of Port Hope, Peter, the opportunity with Sanderson stepping down, you've got 4 candidates running, 2 very clearly experienced incumbents on council, and 2 folks that are coming in to say, we think we can do a better job. So let's talk a little bit about the energy in Port Hope and start there in terms of our mayor's race. Obviously, Jeff Lee is 25 years on council. This gentleman has a lot of experience in the office of politics. What are your thoughts on his chances tonight?
Well, my thoughts on it is that, well, Jeff Lee's, his big asset is he's had 25 years on council. I think he's probably served in every kind of committee that can possibly be there. So I think that's a real plus for him. To the people who lived in Cobourg Port Hope all their lives, are certainly going to think very strongly about supporting him. Laura Carr, on the other hand, is very involved with the heritage aspect of Port Hope, with the ACO in Port Hope. Has been a real advocate for preserving the heritage, and I think it shows in Port Hope. I think they've done an excellent job with the main street and so forth. And then the absolute newcomer coming in.
Yes.
Interesting. Certainly, she has a strong political background.
Yes,
and also and Rose, and she's done a tremendous job in making people aware of the crisis in Ukraine, but also in the families that she's been able to shelter and bring into Northumberland County, get them settled, finding funding for them, places for them to live. So she's shown a lot of leadership and a lot of ability to organize. So, 3 strong candidates. So very fortunate.
Well, and you're speaking of Elena Hankivsky for the Ukrainian cause. Absolutely. My apologies. Angela Grogan, complete newcomer, fell in love with Port Hope. Fell in love with someone she met at a drive-through. I think it was at Tim Hortons. She said, "What a delightful character!" But talk about a complete diversity of characters. It's a really interesting race.
It is, absolutely, and you got to ask yourself. I mean, you got 2 newcomers in there. What does that do to the actual vote? Because you got a lot of people, a lot of history in Port Hope, a lot of long-time residents that'll be voting. And of course, you mentioned Jeff Lee's 25 years. I mean, you're walking down the street and he's got a hi for you and probably hand you a coffee, right? Ask you what you thought about the Bruins game, that sort of thing. So he's your next door kind of guy. It's a really interesting race. I want to see what 2 newcomers against 2 incumbents are going to do to this. It's one that I think I haven't been able to predict at all. I really don't have anything as I've thought about it and watched a little bit peripherally about what's been going on and the issues that are in Port Hope. It's going to be interesting to see how this comes out.
It will be one of those.
The Port Hope issue is the Port Hope political scene is different than, say, Cobourg.
Yes.
In Port Hope, you have the municipality of Port Hope, the town itself, and then you have what was used to be Hope Township.
Yes.
So their interests in former Hope Township, are rural. The farming communities. There are a lot of people who have built lovely homes out there. They have kind of different interests than the actual town of Port Hope. And so there's that dynamic at play there. So that's going to be an interesting thing tonight. I think another one, Mark, that we haven't touched on yet, but in our neighbors to the east of us, Alnwick Haldeman.
Yes.
Interesting candidates running there. Steve Gilchrist and Mr. Logel. Logel has been around a long time. In fact, was elected the mayor and had to resign temporarily for health reasons, and then had to resign again. But now he said, I'm in great health and I'm ready to run again. And Steve Gilchrist is coming in. He says he has a very strong concern about the Oak Ridge Moraine. People don't understand it. Alnwick Haldeman has a big decision to make. It's a rapidly growing township, particularly in the southeast corner, where, down near Lakeport, where the subdivision of almost 500 to 1,000 homes is predicted, and a developer wants to build it there. It's a controversy because you have to look at the infrastructure.
Right.
So another interesting race tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
Who's supporting whom, and that sort of thing.
Well, you bring a great point forward, Peter, around in Port Hope in particular. You've got the urban with,
Yes.
not versus, but with the urban with
The
the
rural,
rural.
yes.
And Jeff Lee spoke at great length about that
Yes.
it really is two sides of the coin. How do you bring that all together? Here in Coburg, of course, we have quite a vibrant community. We've talked a lot during the debates and the one-on-one interviews that I believe it's about 45% of the population is over 55. So to talk about two sides of the coin, you have an aging demographic and young families moving in.
Yeah.
So there's this constant need as a politician, I think, in some of these regions to say, we have several communities to serve at once. What are your thoughts here in Coburg itself? We've got Henderson and Cleveland coming up against each other for the mayor's seat. John Henderson, of course, our incumbent, has done council and the mayor's office for some time. Lucas Cleveland coming in as a newcomer, local business owner, comes out of the oil and gas industry, feels he's done a lot of work with massive budgets and running things as a business. And part of his platform was, I'd like to do that here in Coburg. We need to get people on the bus. And that was an interesting thread for his platform. John Henderson, of course, has accomplished some great things here in town and wants another 4 years. What are your thoughts when it comes to Henderson and Cleveland coming up against each other as mayor?
Well, I think John Henderson represents a continuation of a council and the way we do things in Coburg.
Yes.
And I think Cleveland's come in, Lucas Cleveland's come in and said, I would shake things up. And he says, I want to be a leader. And he's said that often. I want to be a leader, not a manager. And so I think if Lucas Cleveland were to get in, I think it would be an interesting one, because I think he might promote different ideas and different ways for the town to grow. With John Henderson, I think you have something, he's stable. I think he's a solid kind of a leader and has served Coburg well in his time in office. So, but they are two different personalities, and they have two different views of how they would manage the town of Coburg and how they would see its growth. So I think people have had a choice of staying with someone they know or taking a chance on someone who is obviously, as you said, has been in the oil and gas industry, has done other. He's been an entrepreneur himself, owning a local business right downtown. He's a person who thinks outside the box. Yes. So we have two different kinds of personalities running. It's really going to be interesting how people choose, and I think that's been the controversy and the conversation throughout the town. Sure. Okay, who am I going to vote for? Who am I going to support? And what are the pluses and minuses of both of them? I think it'll be an interesting race.
It's an exciting time. York, your thoughts here in Coburg?
Two different personalities, two different styles for sure coming in. We got two different demographics that vote too, as you mentioned. Yeah. We got the young families that are coming in. We have folks that have lived here their entire lives. Who goes out and votes?
Yeah. That's
right.
Fair.
You look at traditionally voter turnout has been fairly low. It was extremely low in Coburg as of Friday. We heard. We don't have any updated numbers from today, but it's who's coming out to vote. The young tend to go for the change more. They come in, they see something, they're fresh eyes on something. If the young get out and vote, I would think Lucas would be would. I think it's going to be close regardless.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if it is the older demographic that's going out and voting, that tends to be more of a status quo.
Great point. I think the demographics in Coburg are, in fact, for people 65 and over. Their concerns are a lot different than those who are looking for a first-time job or who are working in an industry. These people are retired. A lot of them have moved into the town because they love the town and they love being close to the lake and that sort of thing. And so they tend to be kind of stick with the status quo. So it'll be interesting if they're motivated. Older people, older citizens of the town tend to make sure they vote. If you're going to pick a group that you're going to say 85% of them vote, I would say those 65 and over will vote for sure. Younger people but they'll vote if there's an issue that really grabs them. And that's the way I would read it. And they galvanize behind an issue that they say that's important, and I've got to get out and vote. And it's not. I don't think they vote as consistently. Maybe that's unfair, as say seniors would. Senior people 65 and over.
I think traditionally you're absolutely dead on the spot there,
Yeah.
Peter. I think for us, with coming out of the pandemic, we talked about this a bit before the show, that it's an electronic age. We are voting. Polls were open in some regions of Northumberland October 12th, some October 14th, or October 24th.
Right.
In the old days, this was the day you'd go to the polling station. So to your point about a younger generation, there's a different opportunity. But I will say, having had some of the one-on-one interviews here in the studio and the debates, there were a lot of issues brought forward from candidates that really would raise an eyebrow for some to say, you know, I hadn't thought of the younger generation coming in here. Is there a place to live? If I'm a part of an industry, can I find a place to live here in town? So I think it's an interesting dichotomy between the two, and we'll see that flesh out through the course of the evening. And we're not that far, I think, from knowing what our numbers are coming in. So we're very close to getting some actual results.
That's one of the benefits of internet and phone, right? I mean, the numbers are already there.
But I do want to go to, I would say, a comfort zone, if I can, York, because you're in Brighton. And just talking about different regions, let's take a moment to really honor our neighbors in Brighton and some of the issues there. What are your thoughts in terms of the politics in Brighton these days?
It's a lot calmer than it was the last couple of councils. There was a lot of let's just say disruptions in Brighton for over the last couple of terms. This one has been calmed down under the leadership of Brian Ostrander. A lot of growth in Brighton. There has been a ton of growth, and it continues to be happening right now. There's issues in Gosport that affects a very small amount of people in the municipality of Port Hope, but a very passionate group of people, which you got to pay attention to. You got to pay attention to that passion because it's contagious as well. So there's some issues. There's nothing major, nothing that I live in Brighton and nothing stands out to me that I'm really upset about. It's been a calm 4 years with the exception of the pandemic. I don't know what's going to happen in the mayor's race. I mean, if you look at the signs we talked before going on there, if you look at the signs, you got a ton of signs out for LeBlanc, but not as many for Ostrander. Ostrander came out a little bit later with putting signs out in the municipality. But again, you said too, signs don't vote. Right?
Fair enough. And we're seeing on our graphics here, thank you, Mark, and the control room, the team that's helping us tonight. Just in terms of the councillor options, we have obviously 5 being elected tonight. Any thoughts in terms of the energy and personalities and platforms in terms of the council?
I wish I did, but not one other than Brian Ferrettis, who I got a piece of literature that I found stuck in my door.
Wow.
Nobody came to my door.
Okay. Good.
So now I live on the main street driving in, on Yonge Street coming in. So I don't know if they just weren't walking up there or not, but I had nobody come to my door.
Interesting.
So getting to meet them personally, the only one I know really personally is, Emily Rowley, who's already in. Jeff Wielden, who ran for the Green Party a few times, unsuccessfully, unfortunately for Jeff running. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in council.
You hit a good point on Brighton. I lived down in Brighton for quite a while. I taught them in secondary school, and it's 10,000 people. You said Brighton is 10,000 people now, but it is a bedroom community in the sense that these people either work in Trenton or Belleville. And so as a bedroom community, what are their issues? In the sense that they come home, they have dinner at night, and they go to bed, and they get up and they leave and they go to work again. And so that it really is a bedroom community. And I think the perspective of the people there and what their needs are would be, they say, different than say in Coburg or Port Hope. So I don't know how that impacts on the town. If there are issues there, just around the fact that it's a different kind of community.
The issues will come as you see what's happening in Coburg.